Hi everyone, it's Hannah with Meadow Blossom Goods, and I've been getting tons and tons of questions about the gum arabic starches. And so I am going to do a short little video to kind of show you all the possibilities that there are out there when you're working with the gum arabic starches, kind of no matter what time period you're looking at, because gum arabic was being used for a long, long, long time. Um, there are a couple different things you can do with it. You can fully starch something in gum arabic. They were doing that. It was really good for lighter weight fabrics like lawns. Um, and it was also really good for silks, something you wanted to give a little body to. And they used it for kind of finer stuff like filling in not filling in, like binding raw edges on things, whether it's for applique or pinked edges or just anything you didn't really want to fray out. Kind of the original fray check, so to speak. So the recipe that I have looks like this. It has this cool little Civil War looking label on it. Gum arabic, and it's the 1863 recipe. For the most part, the recipe didn't really change that much, but I found more references to it being used later for stuff than earlier, but they were using it as like a laundry additive in the 18th century, and also for doing pinked edges, the same as they were later on as well. So it comes in this little bottle. The solution in here is pretty strong, so if you want to go ahead and dilute it for whatever you're using it for, you're welcome to. I encourage it for a lot of things too. When you dilute it, I would use distilled water because you're going to be less likely to get like watermarks and stuff on there as badly as you would if you were using like tap water. And always pour from the bottle into a different container if you're going to start something, because you don't want to contaminate this bottle. Is a natural product, and by itself it's pretty sterile, but when you start adding other things off of fabric, like if you're dipping a paintbrush in there or something, you're probably going to get something in there that's going to cause yucky things to happen. So this bottle will last for a really long time as long as it's not contaminated with something else. So pour it into a little dish, and then I suggest kind of wiping off the neck of the bottle before you put the lid back on, because gum arabic is kind of like an early glue, so to speak. It comes from a tree resin. So when it's all mixed up, it kind of becomes glue, and it will glue your lid on and make it really, really, really hard to get off. If that does happen, a little bit of warm water should help your case there. So let's take a look at what some of the things we can use it for would be. Okay, so I hope that you can see everything here really well. First, what I have, and there's actually a piece of hair like stuck to it, this is a piece of just dotted Swiss, and I kind of did a full starch. I dipped the whole thing in the gum arabic, and I had diluted what comes from the bottle by half when I did this. And I know it's hard to tell on video, but it's easier to tell in video than it is in a photograph. It has a much crisper body to it. It has a little bit of a different drape. It holds its shape a little better. And it's not, I mean, it's still soft, but it has a little more body, and it has like what I would call like that original finish. So, you know, like when you get a garment, even in today's day and age, and you wear it the first time and it has this great feel, and then you wash it and that great feel is just like gone forever. I find that the gum arabic and really a lot of starching methods are going to give that really nice feel back. So it really does this for lawns. The terminology that they use in a lot of the original publications is that it will make them feel new again. And I think I 100% agree with that statement. So this is kind of a sample of just a light dotted Swiss, just so you can kind of see what it looks like when it has been starched with the gum arabic. If you want to add it to a starch powder, you can. So what I would do in this situation is when you're going through the cooking process, which I do have a video out cooking our 1902 starch, that shows you the instructions. And all the instructions for all of our starch powders are pretty much the same. So when you're cooking, like when you get to the end of cooking that starch powder, I would add like a tablespoon of the gum arabic, like right out of the bottle, and that should kind of add a nice finish to your already amazing starch powder. So that would be what you would do if you were using it as an additive. Most of the references I find to using it as an additive come to us from like the 18th century and Regency periods. So that method wouldn't be as appropriate for later stuff. The thing that does kind of cross time periods quite a bit is using pinked edges on silk or velvet or whatever it is that you have a nice edge. You want it to hold that edge and not fray out. And this is a piece of silk, and it's been pinked with some 18th century pinking irons. And I also have a piece of velvet here too. I mean, it's kind of a crappy piece of velvet, but it will get my point across. I just kind of cut like a nice little rounded edge on there, say if you were using it for applique or something like that. On silk, the gum arabic is going to like watermark it and pink it. So kind of tint the color of it. So if you're using it for a trim, I would do like the whole piece because you're not going to have an issue with that trim. For 18th century, if you're doing like a sleeve ruffle or something like that, I was thinking that it might not be a bad idea to do like the whole ruffle. But that's kind of personal preference. You can kind of play around with some scraps and kind of see what works best for you. And I mean, if you have a darker color silk, it might not make as big of a difference, but on like this lighter blue, it does. We've done it a couple times. I also take like a paintbrush. This is the easiest method that I've found. I haven't found a lot of like how to apply gum arabic information, but I have found lots of reference to it being used for this kind of thing, just not necessarily the method. So what I'm going to do, I have poured some of the gum arabic into like a little custard dish here. And you want to make sure that you kind of swirl it around and shake the bottle before you pour it too. It is, again, a natural product, and sometimes it gets a little, like if you hold it up to the light, you can see it's a little, there's some fibrous stuff in there. And that's just kind of sediment, and it'll dissolve back in pretty easily, so not too big of a deal. This mixture for using it on the velvet and the silk, I'm going to dilute it a little bit. So like I said, use distilled water and add just a little bit of that in. I'm not a big measurer, so about half and half, or, you know, maybe a third of it. I kind of get my brush going, and I'm actually probably going to start with the velvet. So I get my brush nice and saturated, and I mean, you don't, especially with velvet, you don't want to soak the whole thing because it's going to kind of change the texture of the velvet too. But if you're doing applique work or something, you're going to want to bind that edge in. So what I do is I take the gum arabic and I just kind of paint that edge. And you might have to do a second coat if you miss some of it. But you can, I don't know how well you can see it depending on your screen size and stuff, but you can see like over here, you kind of have that fuzzy frayed edge. And just with the painting of that gum arabic, I've smoothed a lot of that out already. So if it looks like your fibers are moving a certain direction, I would kind of go with that. So you're kind of going with the grain. But yeah, it's just going to smooth out all those raw edges. And once it dries, it's going to kind of glue them together, so to speak, which is how it binds the edge, so you don't have to deal with any fraying once you have a finished garment. And this might need to be reapplied over the time. And I mean, if you get rained on or something, it might need to be touched up, and that's okay. It's kind of to be expected with a natural product. So yeah, for like a larger edge like that, it's pretty easy to do this kind of thing. So for the pinked edge, you're going to do basically the same thing. You're just going to have to be really careful to catch as little bit of the edge as you possibly can. And this is a huge case of like a little dabble do you. You don't need a lot, just enough to kind of wet the very edge and seal in those edges. If you put a little bit too much on, it will start to wick it back into the fabric. And sometimes you can blend those lines out and sometimes you can't. So just a teeny tiny bit to paint those edges. And just kind of keep going like so. You can see that like on this edge it is starting to bleed back a little bit. And really, I think that's probably okay. I mean, not every pinking job is perfect. Not every dress is perfect. Not every edge is going to be perfect, and that's okay. I think sometimes in the historical world we set some pretty high standards, but we forget that they were really practiced at what they're doing, and we're not as practiced. So yeah, just like so. It's just going to touch just the end, and it's going to be just enough to kind of glue those raw edges together to prevent any fraying. So thanks again for tuning in. Again, this is Hannah with Meadow Blossom Goods. If you have any questions or you want to show some of the work that you've done with our products or anything, you can check us out on Facebook at Meadow Blossom Goods, or you can check us out on Instagram, hashtag Meadow Blossom Goods. And of course, all of our products are available at www.meadowblossomgoods.etsy.com. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing the cool projects that you're coming up with. Thanks.